On this day, the 13th of February 1804, in Merthyr Tydfil, an event took place, a small start that was to have far-reaching consequences right across most parts of the world throughout the 19th century. Because on a stretch of tram road near the Penydarren ironworks, the very first steam locomotive was to run on rails. Well, to say that this was the precursor of a transport system that was to have fundamental impact throughout the 19th century is really something of an understatement. So many publications rightly state that it was the 21st of February when the great public occasion took place and the locomotive ran from Merthyr Tydfil to Abercynon. Well, I know you can accuse me of being exceedingly pedantic, but it wasn't the first date that the locomotive actually ran on rails, because the engineer responsible had made a few dry runs beforehand. And who was that engineer? Well, it was Richard Trevithick, the Cornishman, who really, I suppose, can lay claim to be one of the great mechanical engineers of the late 18th and early 19th centuries. And what was he doing in Merthyr Tydfil at that time? Well, given that the town was probably the most important iron manufacturing centre in Britain, and therefore, of course, the world, perhaps it's not surprising that it should have attracted many talented individuals. In 1803, Trevithick was working for Samuel Humphrey, the entrepreneurial owner of the Penydarren ironworks. Evidently, the spur for the construction of the locomotive was a bet between Humphrey and Crawshay, another ironmaster, that a load of 10 tons couldn't be hauled by steam from Merthyr Tydfil to Abercynon. The bet was for 500 guineas. So, with such high stakes, it made a great deal of sense for Trevithick to try out his locomotive on at least 4 occasions before the 21st. He wrote a letter on the 15th of February, and he said, "Last Saturday," which of course that would have been the 11th, "last Saturday we lighted the fire on the tram wagon and it worked without wheels to try the engine." He followed that with a letter on the following Monday, the 13th, and he said, "We put it out on the tram road. It worked very well and ran uphill and down with great ease and very manageable. We have plenty of steam and power." It was the following Tuesday that the run to decide the bet took place, and what an event that proved to be. Crowds of people turned up to witness the event, and Trevithick wrote a letter the following Wednesday in which he stated, "Yesterday we proceeded on our journey with the engine. We carried 10 tons, 5 wagons and 70 men riding on them the whole of the journey. It's above 9 miles, which we performed in 4 hours and 5 minutes. But we had to cut down some trees and remove some large rocks out of the road. The engine, while working, went nearly 5 miles per hour." So that was the historic event, and the 21st of February was the day when that happened. But alas, there is no evidence that the bet was ever honoured. Well, we can only begin to imagine what Humphrey, Trevithick, their fellow workers, and all those present must have felt when they saw that mechanical monster snorting and steaming down the track. Well, happily, we do have a pretty good idea, because 117 years later, the Welsh Industrial and Maritime Museum in Cardiff constructed a replica of that very locomotive based on the original drawings. Watching the locomotive trundle along the track specially constructed at the National Waterfront Museum in Swansea. It is perhaps understandable and gives emphasis to the rather prescient report in the Cambrian newspaper of the 24th of February 1804, in which they stated, "It is not doubted that the number of horses in the kingdom will be considerably reduced, and the machine, in the hands of the present proprietors, will be made use of in 1,000 instances yet thought of for an engine." So, from that small beginning in Merthyr Tydfil, that was the point that started the fundamental change in transportation throughout the 19th century. And who would have thought that that section of tramroad, parts of which can still be walked, running from Merthyr Tydfil to Abercynon, should have heralded such a fundamentally important historic event.